All right, we'll get started here. Hi everyone, my name's Eric with BobCAD. I am the demo technician with BobCAD-CAM. So I'm doing demonstrations of the software program for potential customers. I'm doing technical support questions. So if you have any issues with the software program, any questions at all, we have our phone number and email address down in the comment section. And I'll transition over to the software program here to be looking at the CAD side of things, where I'll be doing the webinar today. I also do some of the training sessions as well with BobCAD-CAM. So we offer technical support. We're open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're also able to do training sessions. So you could book an hour or a 2-hour session with us and be able to go over things like we're going over today, anything in CAD like we're going over today, and anything with programming for your part files there in the training session. So we'll get started here. We're going to be going through all of the 2D functionality that's most important to us to create a drawing, and then getting into the 3D functionality to create a 3D model. And we'll be looking at sketching on different planes, maybe creating some 3D models, that extruding that way, extrude cutting, and things like that. So we'll go to the top to start and go to create 2D. And I'm going to create a basic shape if you guys want to follow along. I'm going to create 2D. I'm going to arc, and I'm creating a circle to start with. I'm just going to start with the 4-inch diameter that it starts out by default and click OK. So I'm creating a circle with the arc function. I'm creating a rectangle with the rectangle function. I'm keeping it at 2 inches by 2 inches just to try to keep things simple here to follow along. And I'm going to go over here and sketch it over here. The center point of the rectangle looks like it's at x6, y0. And if you're not able to click right on that point, it's okay. Once you place it down, you can always modify it after you type in the coordinates here. And then you can click OK to finalize that, to shift it over. I was able to click on it pretty easily right there at that location because we have the snap increment option down at the bottom right here. You can see this icon. Oops, maybe you can't see this icon because of my face in the way here. Let me try to move myself. If not, maybe not. I can move the software program, I guess. So if you see it right here, right here at the bottom right, this icon of a magnet. You can turn that on and turn that off, and you can also type in those numbers. It starts off with a 1/16 of an inch. You can change it. I'm going to change it to 1 inch, for example. And once I change it to 1 inch, you can see while I'm sketching, it's going to move over every 1 inch to sketch my drawing exactly where I want it there. And if you turn off the snap increment option, you get more of a freehand option to sketch it exactly where you want, modify lines and arcs a lot easier with that sort of freehand without the snap increment setting. So anyways, I'll cancel out of the rectangle function here. And then I will go to the top, and I'm going to go to line. I'm going to go to the top of my rectangle, highlight the top line here. Now you can see the snap points, the midpoint, and the 2 endpoints of a line. I'm going to sketch a line from the endpoint over here on the right. And I'm going to move over to my circle. I'm going to highlight the circle here with my cursor. And you can see the snap points, and you can also see the tangency point for every arc that it picks up once I go towards the tangency point there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go from endpoint of the corners of the rectangle here and to the tangency points for my arc here. Let me know if you guys have any questions in the comments section. More than happy to help. And we can get into some of the sketching. I'm just going to create a basic 2D shape and 3D modeling for extrude boss, and then get into a little more detailed stuff after some basic 2D and 3D CAD stuff here. So once I've created a couple shapes, I want the outside profile of this. And to create that, I go to the top and go to Utilities. and I can go to my trim functions here right below utilities. I'm going to go to quick trim so that I can click on these 3 lines here of the rectangle on the inside of the profile and the inside 2 arcs here of the circle. So now I have a profile around to create a 3D model for this, or I could do a profile cut around this part, around inside of a sheet of stock or something like that to cut this out. So I'm going to cancel out of the quick trim function here. I'm going to go to the top and go to create 3D to create the 3D model. And I'm going to go to extrude boss right below create 3D. Now I can click on each individual arc and line here. I can hold shift and click to chain select everything, or I can also drag a box to window select inside that area there. I'm rotating around by clicking and holding the scroll wheel to revolve around here, looking at it on an angle there. And I can change the distance of how far it's extruding out over here on the left-hand side in the data entry window. I can type in the distance here. Let's make it 1.5 inches. For the draft angle, that's to create tapered walls. So just to show you, if I type in 10 here, it's going to be 10 degrees tapered walls along the sides of the part. I'm going to zero that out again. And I can update pretty quickly, update my preview here by hitting tab on my keyboard so that now it's back to the straight walls. And then I can go in the other direction if I want to extrude it down as well into the negative Z direction there. Let's say I want to go 1/2 inch down, hit tab to update that, see how it looks for my preview here. And once I am finished with it, I can click OK to create the 3D model there. Now I can also create a shape. Let's do a shape on the inside just to cut through it, just to show you the extrude cut function under the create 3D tab here. So I got to create a sketch inside of this solid model. Now a couple different ways of doing it here. I can maybe go to my layers over here on the right hand side, right above where I am right here, my layers page. It's usually set up this way. You might be able to find it on the side. Maybe it's pinned way over to the side here that you can click on to show your different tabs there. If you don't have it showing, you can always right click up at the top and go to your different pages here. Like for example, your Bob Art, your layers page, UCS, user coordinate system, which we'll get into a little bit later here. But yeah, we've got the 3D model, and it's all on the CAD layer at the moment right here, our first layer. Now I'm going to right click anywhere in this layers window, and I'm going to go to add new layer, and I'm going to make it active with a green check mark. I'm going to name it, so I'm just going to type in this box and type in extrude cut. Just so I can label things and know exactly what I want here. And now I'm drawing on this layer so I can separate it out from my CAD layer, which my first drawing in extrude boss is on, hiding it by clicking on that icon of an eyeball there. So if you've been following along so far with the beginning here, all I did was create a circle. You can see with this profile here, created a circle here at the center of 4 inches in diameter. I had created a rectangle out here 2 by 2 and just went from endpoint to tangency point, sketching lines, endpoint to tangency point to create this profile. Then I did a under utilities, went to quick trim to trim away the inside profile shapes there. And now I can hide all of the geometry that the layer is on by hiding the CAD layer here. Another shortcut key you can see on my keyboard, I'm hitting S as in solid to show or hide the solid. And now I can see the wireframe only if I wanted to do it that way also. A couple different ways of hiding the surfaces to sketch a little bit more inside there. So I'm going to go to create 2D. I'm going to go to rectangle, just make a square pocket on the inside of the shape here. I'm going to move it over. Let's see, how far can I move it over? Let's do 2 inches. So it's a 2 by 2 square. I'm going to move it over in X 2 inches. Hit tab so I can see the preview. And then I'm going to hit OK. Then I can go to the top, go to Create 3D, go to Extrude Cut, select my square here, and I want to make sure that it's going all the way through. If I want a through hole here or pocket all the way through, I can type in the numbers here and make sure it's, let's say, 5 inches above, and let's say 5 inches below. It just has to go through it. Doesn't have to be an exact location there. I can also click and drag on these arrows here. If you can see the extrude cut and the extrude boss, you can change the distance by just dragging your arrows that way. And then clicking OK to get your extrude cut there. All right. So we'll get through some of the other 2D functionality, some of the 3D functionality, maybe get into the UCS manager to be able to sketch on different planes instead of just sketching on the top plane that we're sketching on at the moment. Get into a little more useful, a little more technical stuff there for 3D modeling. And I think at the end we'll also get into Bob Art, because technically the art package is an add-on, but it is part of CAD. You're creating designs from an image into a drawing, so we can look at that at the end as well. And if you guys have any questions, please let me know in the comments section. I'm more than happy to answer anything you guys have there. We're doing extrude boss, extrude cut. Now, if I have to show you, let's get into some of the 2D stuff, and then we'll get in back to this part file for 3D stuff as well, to just sort of explain all the other 3D modeling functions here. So if I go to the top, I'm going to go to a new file here. At the top left, create a new file. I still have my BobCAD1 file to the left here. I can tab over to it at any time. Let's go back to the Create 2D tab and go through the 2D functionality that we have. So we went through some of the basic drawing functions here. We have creating points, creating lines, creating arcs with a circle or a certain arc that you want, creating splines, and rectangles. We also have a shape library. So if I click on shape library and click on the drop down here, we have all of these predetermined shapes. At the moment, we don't have any way to make any different predefined shapes at the moment. We've been working on that, but we can click on one of the shapes here, and we can type in the different dimensions here. So like overall width, overall height here for number 1, overall width, number 2, overall height. Number 3 is the diameter for the inside hole there. And then once I click OK, then it creates that shape for me. And I can go out and I can click to sketch anywhere I want for my shape there as well. Some other shapes, if I want to get rid of this, I can go to the top and go to Undo. I can go over from the shape library. I can go to this drop down for gears, sprockets, roller cams. I tend to show this gear function a lot because you can type in the number of teeth for a gear, the diameter of a gear for that kind of function there. If we're drilling many holes at a time, we can go over to our hole pattern. We can create a circular or a grid pattern. I'm going to type in, I'm going to keep the width and height of the pattern 2 inches by 2 inches. I'm going to change the number of holes in the X direction to 4. I'm going to change the number of holes in the Y direction to 4. So we've got 16 holes there, 4 by 4. If I click OK, we've got basically one, well, I would say technically one pattern, right? So if I go to the top and go to select mode, it's a very important function to use here, our select mode, and be able to select something, any kind of geometry, to delete it, to get the summary of the entities I select, to be able to move it around, things like that. I go into my select mode. I can click on this one of the holes here, and it selects all of them for me, because technically it is a pattern in terms of geometry. If I want them broken up from the start, I can undo, go to Create 2D, and go to Hole Pattern. When I'm creating it, I can check this box, Break Arc. And you can see now when I go into my select mode, they are all individual holes that I can select now. With that option there, it is going to be the same thing as when I go to text. At the very bottom, we have this button labeled Vectorize. So that's the same thing as in text when I type in BobCAD, for example, and I don't have the Vectorize button or the Break Arcs option checked, and I click OK. When I go to my select mode and select the text, it's all just one entity. There's not lines and arcs for the B, there's not arcs for the O, it's all just one entity mentioned as text. And I can make sure of that by clicking on it, and I can see my entity summary by right-clicking anywhere here in the CAD workspace, going to Entity Summary here, about halfway down the page. And this can be really helpful because when I highlight specific geometry, it'll tell me the bounds down here halfway down. It'll tell me the total distance with the text I've selected, 0.984. In the Y distance up, it's 0.236 for the height of the text. So it'll tell me anything I highlight. If I don't have anything highlighted, for example, just go to my entity summary. It tells me the overall distances of my whole drawing and everything I have on the page here. So 2.3 inches with my with my holes and my text. Total height of 3.1 inches from the bottom here all the way up to the top of the text here. And you can see I have 16 arcs. Those are my 16 holes that I have, and only one piece of text. When I go back in, I'm going to undo the text here, go back in and type out BobCAD again. And I'm going to move it over by clicking on the text, dragging it over, and clicking a second time to place it down. Clicking Vectorize, make sure I'm doing that this time, and hit OK. I can right-click and go to Entity Summary. And now we have 93 arcs and 41 lines, because if I highlight any of these here, the O, we've got the different arcs in here. We've got a line for the B, lines and arcs for the B here. So that's all broken up into lines and arcs. It can help with older machines, especially with something like that, with text, with hole patterns, and with splines, especially with older machines. If it needs to interpolate around an arc, very helpful to be able to break the geometry from hole patterns, point patterns, text, splines into lines and arcs to interpolate the arcs better. And speaking of which, if I have a hole pattern, if I've created a hole pattern, if I've created text, for example, if I've created a spline, I'm going to go to Create 2D, go to Spline, plot a couple points here to create this fancy spline here, and click OK. Again, once I go to my select mode, it's only one spline there. It's going to be very difficult to try to interpolate around an arc like that for like a profile cut. So if I want to break the spline into lines and arcs after the fact, if I want to break any text or any hole patterns or point patterns after I've created it, and I forgot to hit that vectorize button or break arcs, I can go to the top and go to my utilities, and that's where this explode function all the way to the right can be really useful. I can go to explode, I can click on the spline, and click OK, and it will explode or break up the spline, the text, the whole pattern into line segments and arc segments wherever it's able to sort of interpolate these arcs here. So especially for older machines, needs to be able to interpolate around arcs like that. It's going to break it into multiple arcs, but able to break them up into following along the spline there. So a lot of that stuff can be super helpful. The utilities with explode, if you've created anything after the fact and want to break it up into lines and arcs there. So we left off with whole pattern, text, fillet and chamfer. So if we have like our previous drawing and we had corners to go around, like the corners over here, we can fillet the corners or chamfer the corners with the fillet, 2D fillet, and 2D chamfer options there from a drawing. All right, I think we're getting to the end of the Create 2D functionality. Let me know if you guys have any questions with any of the other functions in there that you may have questions on. One other one that I like to use, for example, would be the fit text to a curve. So that option would be is if I create a piece of text here. So I'm going to type in BobCAD another time, and I'm going to click and drag it over. I'm going to make sure that it's not vectorized. So it is the geometry technically is text. And I'm going to go to OK to create it. Now, just as a side note also, when we're getting into text, I can change the font up at the top. And you can use any font that you want to use. If you go online and you search for free fonts, you can download a font onto your computer. And you have to run the download there, run the installer from the TrueType font file. And then it will, once you reopen BobCAD, it will be here in your Windows fonts. We also have BobCAD fonts over to the right. If you need to do some engraving and you want to just do the single line and arc here, rather than doing, you'd be engraving twice here, the inside and the outside. All of the BobCAD fonts give you single, actually technically not all of them, but most of them will have just single line fonts for you to be able to engrave a lot easier there. So I've got this text right here. And let's say I want to have it follow along some specific geometry here. Let's get pretty basic here. I'm just going to go to arc, go to arc center. I'm going to make it the start angle and end angle over here 180. So I just want half of a circle right here, a semicircle. I'm going to place it down. I want the text to follow along the arc like this. So to go to the top under text, we have that drop down below it, and we have fit text to a curve. I'm going to first select my text, and then I'm going to select my fit curve. I'm going to select the curve that I'm selecting here. I think the easiest way really would be going over to my picking manager, and if it lets me, there we go, lets me end the chain at that location. So if I wanted to pick multiple entities, I can pick a whole chain to follow along and then hit end chain here. And then you can see it follows along the curve that I selected. You can see it's at the start of the arc here with this start option. If I click on middle, it'll move over to the middle of the arc, or end, it will sort of start at the end point there, move over. If I go back to middle, we also have distance from path and distance from start. So distance from start, I think, we'll shift it over to the right. Let's say a ½ inch. Yeah. And I'm going to center it back by zeroing that out. And I can change distance from path to move it up or down following the arc. So let's move it up a ½ inch. Or let's move it below the arc a ½ inch. If I type in a negative there, negative ½ inch. and now it's below it. You can see it's not, it's overlapping a little bit. So what we can do is go back into the text and space it out a little bit more after this. But you've got it below the arc. You can click OK. And then we can modify any geometry after the fact by canceling out of any function that we're in. I'm going to cancel out. I'm going to go to the top, go to select mode, and I'm going to double click on anything that I want here. I'm going to double click on BobCAD. I'm going to go here to extra spacing, add an extra 0.1 or 100,000 spacing to space it out after the fact there. All right, pretty cool. Now, let me know if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns. I think we've got everything done with the Create 2D I wanted to go over. We've got some Create 3D stuff to go over next. And we'll get back into the original part file I was in. So basically, I'm going to go back to where I was for you guys to follow along here. We have some newer guys logged into the live session today. So I'm going to go to the top and go to Create 2D. What I did to create this sketch, I went to Create 2D, went to Arc. I created a circle right here at the center with the default 4-inch diameter. I went to Rectangle, sketched a 2-inch by 2-inch rectangle from the center point of the square and moved it over 6 inches and placed it down right there so that it's at x6, y0. What I did next was I went to Line. I highlighted the top and bottom lines of the rectangle, went to this top right endpoint of the rectangle, went to the tangency point of the arc by just highlighting on the arc and going to the tangency point and doing the same thing on the bottom there. Then to get rid of the extra lines and arcs on the inside profile, I went to Utilities, I went to Quick Trim, and I trimmed away the inside lines here and arcs on the inside profile. So now I've got a profile like this to work on. And what I want to do next, creating the 3D model, I'm going to go to Create 3D, go to Extrude Boss, and select the drawing. And I'm going to, let's see. Oops. Let's see what I got here. I'm going to go to Extrude Boss. Let's see if I can click on each line like this individually for me. There we go. And I'm just going to do a distance of 1 inch in the positive direction and 0 inches in the negative direction. So now I'm just clicking my scroll wheel again and revolving around with my mouse. And I can see I'm starting at Z0, extruding it up 1 inch, clicking OK. And we can get into some of the other 3D modeling functionality from here to show you guys. We have the Create 3D tab. Below it, we have some primitive solids we can create. We have the cube function. I can click and drag it over to see that here. So here's our cube. We have cylinder, sphere, cone, torus, like a donut shape. And we can type in the length, width, and height of the cube here and other dimensions of the other primitive solids there to create a basic shape. We did Extrude Boss to create the solid model here. We did Extrude Cut to cut away from the square pocket on the inside. And now we can get into some of the other functionality here. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to create a basic rectangle here. I'm going to go to Create 2D, go to Rectangle, and I'm going to sketch it along the corner over here of my 3D model, just to show you guys that there are differences under the Create 3D tab, and there's differences between the Extrude Boss that we went into and the Extrude Curve, the Extrude Surface, and all these other 3D options here. So to show you as an example, if I went to Extrude Boss, I select the square and extrude it up. Let's extrude it up 1.5 inches. So it's a little bit further past my original solid. The extrude boss, if there's anything overlapping or if there's anything touching along another solid model, and I click OK, you can see when I go to my select mode, it adds it together automatically to create one solid model. If I undo once, and instead of going to extrude boss, I can go to extrude curve, select my drawing, going out 1.5 inches again, and clicking OK. I cancel out of the function, go to my select mode, and I can see that they are still separate 3D models when I highlight them. So it can be helpful if you're trying to create an assembly and things are intersecting with each other or touching each other. You'd want to go into the extrude curve so that you want to create an assembly for a fixture or things like that, so you have multiple solids there. Then we have extrude surface. I almost never use this, but if you want to use it to extrude from an existing surface, let's say I go from here and I want to extrude that out a certain distance, I can extrude one side, for example, let's say 1/2 inch, and I believe it adds it together. I believe. I could be wrong. Let me go to my select mode. Nope. It actually creates them as separate models. If you wanted to create this as one solid model, again, you could go to the extrude boss, select the edges of the original cube, and extrude it out and make them as one solid together. Now, we do have a function where if you want to do something after the fact, we've got a lot of functions like that. You want to do something after the fact, you want to add them together. That would be this Boolean option to the right here. If I drop this down, we have add, subtract, and intersect. So I'm going to go to add. I can add these two solids together. Click OK. Now it's one solid. So you can do it after the fact. The next one down is subtract. So if I want to subtract this cube from my original solid, I select subtract. I select the main solid, so I want to keep my original solid, and I want to subtract this solid from it. I can always show a preview to make sure I'm doing the right thing there. Yep, I'm subtracting from my original there and clicking OK. So that's the subtract option. Sort of like having a drawing and extrude cutting through, but if you've already got a solid you want to subtract from, you could do it that way as well. Then we also have the intersect option. So what it will do is it will keep what's intersecting between the two there, that little bit area there to keep. Sort of like an imprint option, I guess you could say, but we do have an imprint option where you can create a drawing, you're extruding it out and imprinting from an existing solid with this next selection here. I'll go all the way back. I'm going to undo a few times to my original solid here. I think that's all I've got left with my original solid. We'll get into some of the surfacing functionality here that can be pretty useful. So I'm going to go to a brand new file. I'm in BobCAD 3 now. I'm going to go to Create 2D. I'm going to go to Rectangle, and I'm just going through some really basic shapes here, but then showing you guys the functionality of the other CAD portion of it here after the fact. So I'm just doing a basic rectangle here and clicking OK. Going to Create 3D and going to Planar. So Planar Surface will create a flat surface from any 2D wireframe like I have here with the rectangle. So I'm going to just window select the rectangle here. Gives me my preview in orange, and I can click OK. And you can see it just creates a flat shape from any 2D wireframe there. I'm going to undo that. And if I want to create a curved surface, a 3D surface, well, every surface is 3D, but if you wanted to create a curved surface or any kind of surface that's not flat, you can go to any of the other functions here. The next one over is going to be revolve. So let's say I just want to go with this line here. I click on the line, click over here to end chain, and you can see it's revolving around the x-axis that I have selected over here. You can change the axis it's going around. You can even pick a line to revolve around for a surface, and it creates a cylindrical shape like you see over here. Now it's only creating half of it because I have the rotation angle down here at 180, and I can change it to 360 to make a fully revolved surface there, a cylindrical shape there. I'll undo that. We have some other ones here. We'll get into some of these right after. We've got sweep, we've got cross section, we've got creating surfaces from 3 edges, 4 edges, multi-sided patch, which is more than 4 edges, and I'm going to scroll all the way over here to skin surface. I use the planar surfacing a whole lot for anything that's flat. For anything that's curved, I'll use the skin surface. Unless it's a cylindrical shape, I'll use revolve. That's a really easy one. But I'll also use skin surface because that's a pretty easy one, but it's a really powerful one to create any kind of complex shape you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one of these edges of the square into an arc. So right now all I've got is a 2x2 rectangle. I'm going to go to my select mode. I'm going to highlight this left edge and hit delete on my keyboard to delete that one out. And now I believe we're getting into the we're getting into more of drawing in a three-dimensional way here. So I'm gonna show you guys my, let's see, so you can see right above me here I have my UCS manager that's usually located within the layers manager, sort of docked within each other. If you don't see it over here on your screen, again, you can always go to the top and you can right click up at the top and you have all of your different managers, your layers manager, your UCS manager, your posting manager. So if anything's hidden, it won't have the green check mark here. You can click on it to show or hide it at any time. But if you've maybe accidentally X'd out anything, you can bring it back by right clicking up at the top of your screen. So right now you can see UCS stands for User Coordinate System. So basically, like in other CAD software programs, you'd maybe be familiar with sketching on a top plane or on a top view. We're sketching on a top view right now. We could sketch on a front view. And once I change that checkbox to front, you can see this plane that shows up. And that's the plane that I would be sketching on. I'm not sketching on that plane. I'm going to be sketching on a side plane. So I'm going to click on the next checkbox here. And now you can see in reference to my top UCS, where my z-axis is pointed up from the center of the square, it's now going to be on its side. The z-axis is now going to be flipped over on its side there, because that is the plane that I'm sketching on now. Now, if you see, when I go to create 2D, go to one of my sketching functions, I go to arc here and start creating a circle, you can see that I'm sketching in relation to that plane there. Now I can move off of Z as well, parallel to it, for a depth. But this is, again, where we're getting into the three-dimensional level here, where instead of just sketching on a top plane in 2D, I'm now going to be sketching in 3D to give this edge some curvature and give it some depth here. So I'm going to go to arc. I'm going to go to the drop downs because I've got a whole bunch of other arc options than just creating a circle here. I can go to arc 2 points from center. So this one is where I can just click on a point for my center point of my arc and go out to click where my diameter is going to be there, or I suppose my radius. Then we have the arc function Got a couple others here. Diameter, so you're going from endpoint to endpoint for your arc. Arc 3 points with a center point, so you're going from endpoint to endpoint with your arc and setting up a center point. I don't tend to use this one. I tend to use the next one down, arc 3 points, endpoint to the top radius. I think that one can be, that's a little more user-friendly, I think. I'm going to use that one. I'm going to look at it on an angle, and instead of sketching on a top plane or on a top UCS, I'm going to be sketching on the side here again, so that when I'm sketching on the side, BobCAD will understand I'm going from point to point here, from this edge, or this endpoint to this endpoint. And then when I change the radius here, you can see I'm giving it depth rather than giving it, rather than changing the arc from left to right, I'm changing it up and down in Z effectively. So I'm gonna just place it right here, and I can always go over and change the radius of it right here. Let's make the radius 2 inches and hit tab, see how that looks. So it makes it a little bit lower. If I want to give it a little more depth, maybe I can change the radius to 1 inch. Let's see if it lets me. Yep. So it'll let me move it all the way up, radius of only 1 inch. Let's do 1.25 inches, just so it looks, oh wait, where's it going there? Maybe I can make it smaller? No, it'll only do 1 inch. So let's do 1.75 inches. No, why is it going higher? Huh. Okay. I thought it was, no, interesting. Okay, I'm going to change the radius to 1 inch, just so it's the smallest that it'll go there for me now. So I got 1 inch, and I'm going to click OK. And then now you can see that if I want to create a surface with that will follow along these 3 edges, it will be, it'll obviously be a curved surface with that curve that I have in there. And I can do it very easily by going to Create 3D and going to Skin Surface over to the right here. I'm going to start with the top and bottom edges of my rectangle. Just to make things easy, looking at it from a top view, I'm going to select this line, and then I'm going to end the chain over here on the right for that one. I'm going to go down to the bottom to select this chain because I want 2 chains going in a parallel direction, and then I want the other 2 chains going up or down in a parallel direction as well. And you can see over here on the left-hand side, this way. Okay, so over here at the top left corner, you can see in your skin surfacing function, you've got the 1 inch, I'm sorry, not 1 inch. You've got 1 and 2, and then you've got 3 and 4. So as exactly as I described, the 1 and 2, and then the 3 and 4 going down, or it could be the other way depending on your geometry. It could create a different surface one direction or the other if you have a very complex shape. So we've got chain 1, and you can see when I go down to the bottom, this line here, it depends on where I click the line as well. So if I click to the left of the center point, you'll see that the chain is going the opposite direction as the top one. So I can end chain, and you can see I've got chain 1 and chain 2 now that I can highlight. Now I don't want that. I want both of them going in the same direction. So to change that, I can highlight chain 2 over here on the left-hand side, delete it out. I'm going to click over to the right of the center point of the line and end chain. And then I want to do the same thing left to right. We have our cross-section curves, which are just 2 going in the same direction, and then rail curves, that option below it, are just 2 curves going in the same direction as well. So again, I'm clicking on this arc to the right of the center point here, hitting end chain, and then I'm going to the last line here, going to the right of the center point, and hitting end chain. And that creates our curved surface from there. I click OK, And now if I wanted to, maybe I could create a line, the line that I deleted. I can recreate it right here, point to point here. I could go into my Create 3D and Planar Surface, click on these two edges right here, cap that, go down to the bottom, create a planar surface with the square here to cap that side. And now I've almost got a solid. To make this a solid, so that when I go to my select mode and I don't have 3 separate solids here, I can solidify it by going to Create 3D, and all the way to the right-hand side, we've got Stitch Surfaces to Solid. So I window select all 3 surfaces and click OK. And now when I go to my select mode, I've got a solid model. So that's a very simple way of creating a 3D model from separate surfaces. But yeah, that's how you would do it. If you've got a whole bunch of surfaces you're trying to stitch together to make one solid there, that's how you would do it there. Should be able to go to evaluate, and we can measure this solid by going to measure 1, and you can pick solid, click on the solid here, and it'll give you the area and volume of the solid here. So what is that, 10 inches squared for the surface area, and you've got 1.47 inches cubed for your volume of the solid there. So you got a part file you're trying to make, a complex shape like this on top to make a solid as. You can go to measure 1 and pick the solid once you've stitched surfaces together to make a solid, and get the area and volume to show as well. Yeah, trying to think of what next here. Create 3D. We've got a bunch of surfacing options left. The sweep, cross section, that could be pretty useful. That'd be pretty cool to see. I think we'd get into that one next. Yeah, so let's do that. So what I can do, I'll go to the top. And just the way I'm thinking of it with 3D modeling, I had a customer a while ago saying, they wanted to create an American flag, but from the side they wanted it wavy for the flag. And I showed them how to do it with basically what we've gone over so far with the UCS manager. We do it by going to Create 2D. Now, I apologize, I'm probably not going to make the 13 stripes and the 50 stars at the moment, but I will create a rectangle. I'm going to make it 12 by 6 here, with the bottom left corner right there at the CAD origin with this option button right here. I'm going to go to Shape Library. I'm going to make a few stars here by going to my Shape Library, going to the stars, and I'm going to make them a lot smaller here. Let's do a 1/2 inch. I'm going to go here and here. No, let's go over here. And maybe I could do one more. I'm going to sort of work smarter, not harder here, because I've created these 3, and I'm going to make more than just the 3, of course. By going to Utilities, I'm going to go to Translate. I can select shapes like this here and move them over with the translate amount. I'm going to move it I'm going to move it over 0.6, and I'm going to make copies down at the bottom here. Let's make 10 copies. That's a little too far out. Let's make 5 copies. And so next I can just create some lines going from, let's go from here to here. Okay, and let's make a line going from here to here. Okay, Let's make another line going from, let's see, to go up a 1/2 inch and move over, something like that. And then I can, again, go to Utilities. I can go to Translate. I can select that line, and I can move it up, let's say a 1/2 inch maybe. Oops. And we'll make, instead of 5 copies, uh-oh, this line isn't horizontal perfectly. Let's make that line again here. Okay, good. So we'll go back to Translate, select that line. I'm going to move it up. Let's try to make it 13. No. Oops. I would say 10 is good. And we'll click OK. We can go to Utilities. I'm just going to go to Quick Trim, trim away all this extra stuff here to trim this part here. Trim, well, let's trim here, 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 and these here as well. Unfortunately, I would have to zoom in and eliminate some of the stars here, or not eliminate the stars, but eliminate the lines with all of the intersections between the stars here. Well, actually, no, I don't have to do that. I can go to my select mode, select the 2 lines, and hit delete. That's easier. Okay. So we got a basic American flag like this. We want to go to Utilities, and we want to break at all of the intersections. So let's say break many, I believe, and it'll break all of the lines into where they intersect. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to have some of the stripes here extruded out a little bit more than the others. But I'm going to start with my extrude boss. I'm going to start with my base here, going all the way around. I'm taking my time to select all the lines here that I broke apart along the sides here between all of the intersections of the stripes. I'm going to make the base a 1/4 inch. Actually, let's make the base a 1/4 inch going down, because then when I am extruding it up from there, I'm extruding it up from that base level at the top. All right, cool. So we're going to look at the top view again. I'm going to extrude the stars. Yeah, let's extrude them up. Let's go to extrude boss. I'm just gonna hit S on my keyboard to hide the solid again here. Look at a top view. Extrude the stars up a 1/4 inch. Oops, that one was going down still. So I accidentally extruded them down. To modify that, I can go to my CAD tree and I can edit any 3D modeling function that I already went through after the fact. So I can double click on this last extrude boss. Instead of it going down, I want it going up a 1/4 inch here. There we go. And clicking OK. I can leave the 1/4 inch going down because all it's doing is it's adding to the base 1/4 inch there. Now I'm going to do the stripes. I'm only going to do every other stripe, extruding it up. Let's do a little bit more so that I can cut away from it after. I'm going to go to extrude boss to keep adding to the flag here. I'm going to select this first stripe here. Oops, right there. There we go. I'm going to select this stripe after here. And I'm going to keep going along like that. Oops. I want to skip this line here, go to the next one. And the next one after that. And the last one down here. And I'm going to add a 1/2 inch in the positive direction here. And click OK. Now I hit S on my keyboard to see what I've got at the moment. And now I want to cut away. I suppose I could cut away from the stars as well if I wanted to. But I was focused more on the stripes here to give it that wavy type of look. And to do that, I can go to a side view here, or a front view, I should say, looking at it from a front. And I want to be sketching on this front view and just sketch that sort of squiggly line to give it that wavy effect. And then we're not getting into this today, but once we've got the 3D model like this with the wavy flag look, you can then go into your CAM programming here in BobCAD and be able to do a 3-axis milling and just plane across it, then do a planar operation with a ball end mill and follow along the waviness of the stripes here. But to create it first, we have to go over here, right above me here, the UCS manager. We're going to be sketching on a front plane. I'm going to be looking at it from a front view here. I'm going to be going to create 2D, and let's go to the spline function. Let's create a whole bunch of plot points right here. And you know what? I said I didn't want to do the stars, but I'm going to do the stars as well. I'm sure I'm somewhere below 1/4 of an inch right here. So I'm going to plot right here. I'm going to plot a point. And I'm just going to keep going across and plotting points like this. So I'm going to go like this, keep going down like that, keep going up and down and up and down. Let's make it a little more dramatic over here. Let's go a bit higher and down, and then somewhere in between there, and then down, and then, so you don't want to go too dramatic that far. You can see where the spline interpolates and it will dip down below both of the stripes, which I suppose you could do, but I'm not going to try to get too fancy with it at the moment here. And I'm just I want to make sure I'm going past the total dimension of the flag there, the total width there. And then I'm going to click OK. There's my spline. Then I can go to line. I go from the endpoint of the first endpoint of the spline I created. Click on that point. I'm just going to go up vertical past the 1/2 inch height of the stripes there. Go over to the other side, do the same exact thing. Go from endpoint, go up vertically, and maybe match my first line, make things easy. You can see that intersection geometry right there. And then I'm just connecting the dots. I'm going from that top of the vertical line from the left over to the top vertical line on the right. And I've got my profile right there for my extrude cut to give it that wavy line. I hope it looks good. Let's see how it looks. Let's go to the top, go to Create 3D, go to Extrude Cut, and select the 3 entities. The line, the top line here, the line to the side, the line to the side, and the spline. And now you can see before I click on the spline, it's already going in this front view direction, even though I'm on a top UCS. And the reason for that is because you can see here in the extrude boss and the extrude cut direction, you can see it's along normal. So it understands the 3 lines I've already selected. It's going normal to the direction to where it's intersecting, basically. If I select along Z, it's going to be going straight up and down, and it's not going to cut anything. So I want to keep it at along normal. I want to click on that spline. You can see the original extrude cut. I'm getting a little fancy with this, so I'm going to save what I have with this file before I try it. Don't want to get this far and have to go over it again. We'll say BobCAD. What am I doing? Webinar. I'm doing a webinar right now. All right, BobCAD webinar. I'm going to save it in my downloads. I'm going to go to Extrude Cut. I'm going to select those 4 entities again. I'm going to Extrude Cut, make sure I'm dragging it all the way through like this. And I tend to drag this one further past as well, because when you're on that intersection of your 3D model, sometimes you'll get something wonky if it's trying to terminate right where it's intersecting something. So I tend to extrude cut past both sides there. Kind of a troubleshooting option for you guys. So once I've got the preview, click OK. There's the waviness of the flag. Now I might want to adjust it a little bit here where the stars are. You can see that star, those stars. Maybe I would want to like cut in with the stars rather than extrude boss them out, so it doesn't look like that. But you can see what I was going for necessarily were the stripes. So pretty cool stuff. If you wanted the waviness of the bottom stripes as well, you could do essentially an extrude curve. You could extrude cut from the bottom extrude curve that is separate as a solid than the top stripes of an extrude curve, and then do a second cut with the top stripes there. But if you want to be able to do this, and maybe you could, yeah, that's what you would have to do. You'd have to do an extrude curve and do 2 separate solids, but sort of like doing an inlay, I guess, in terms of CAD. But that's what you would do. That's how you would get some curves to your 3D model there. I'm gonna make it like, let's see. I'm gonna make it like that on an angle there. There we go. So that's how we would do an extrude curve to make wavy lines for a flag. Not bad for a first attempt at it. But if you want to change the spline so that the tall peaks right here are going to be different, you can very well do that as well. But yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions with the 3D modeling functionality of it. I think we got into some of it that can be very useful. I just keep remembering one customer of ours trying to do this, and it came out really well. Cutting it out of wood, doing the wavy lines like this, and cutting into the stripes, cutting into the stars is what he did, and just put a lacquer finish on it, and looked really good. Anyways, so we can go to the utilities, go to evaluate. Let's go to evaluate so that we can create a print next, and then we can see some of the utilities after the fact. We've created a drawing, want to manipulate the drawing after that. So if you guys want to create a print, we can go to a new file. I can create a drawing here. So I'm just going to go to Create 2D. I'm going to go to my shape library, and I'm going to select this guy here and draw it over here in the first quadrant. I want to make sure that I am drawing my drawing here in the first quadrant for prints, because that's where the border for the drawing is going to be placed. Our templates are, at least. So I've got my drawing right here in the first quadrant in positive X and positive Y. And then I can merge a template file that we already have preloaded in the software program to create a print. I do that by going to the top, going to File, going to Merge, and it's going to be under this PC. It's going to be under your C drive, and it's a little deep in here, so got to go through a couple subfolders to find these template files, but it's under BobCAD-CAM data. It's under BobCAD. I'm working in BobCAD v37, but if you're working in an older version, you can open up the subfolder for what version you're working in, BobCAD-CAM v37, and then examples, and then title blocks. And each of these files, they each have a border for the drawing and title blocks for revision number, sheet number, those kinds of options there. So these are all of our template files for creating prints. If you want to create a print, you can design your logo right here, place it down. You can type in your your company name and anything else once you go into Create 2D and go to text and be able to type in anything you want here. You can then go to the top and go to File and go to Print. You can print it to a printer. You can also go here to Print Setup and print it to a PDF file as well. You can go from portrait to landscape. You can change the drawing scale here so that it fits on your page, fit all. And if you don't want these X and Y, this X and Y axis, the grid here, you can turn that off as well by going here to File, going to Settings, going to your current document, and under Display, you can turn off Show Axis and Show Nomen, which is your X and Y arrows there. So now it's hidden from your page, and you can go to File and Print. And now it's not showing. You're printing off this. You're printing it to a PDF, or you can print it to a printer for a hard copy. All right. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, please let me know there. We'll get into the utilities next to manipulate a drawing. And then we'll get into, at the very end here, we'll also take a look at Bob Art. If you have it, you can follow along. If you don't, you could always check with us, see if you wanted to add that on to your license, because that's a really helpful tool to use for CAD design. If you don't like using all of this, drawing, typing in your numbers, all the mathematical stuff, you can just import an image from Google and be able to have BobCAD trace it for you automatically, so you don't have to go in and sketch it yourself. Then we can go to a new file, and we're going to go through some of the utilities. So again, I'm just going to go to a basic shape here. I'm going to go to Create 2D, go to my shape library, and let's go to the one at the far right at the top, slanted support truss. I'm going to make all these numbers. Let's multiply them by 5 for all of them. And you can see that I'm typing in an asterisk and typing 5. So you can do all of your basic calculator functions here. You can add, subtract, multiply, divide to modify any numbers in here very easily. Basic calculator functions work. You just hit tab and it will update for you automatically there. So I've got a drawing and I want to manipulate some of the edges here. I can go to the top, go to my select mode. I can double click on this top line here, for example. And now you can see I'm in the entity modify. So I'm modifying this line here. I can click on the midpoint to move the line around, and I can click on the endpoints to connect them to wherever I want, or maybe I want to make this a straight line over on the right hand side intersecting. I can click on the endpoint here, I can move it out to here, and then click OK. I can then click on this line, delete it out, and then I can double click on this line and extend it up. So the entity modify can be really helpful. Again, all you're doing is you're going to the top, you're making sure that this icon is highlighted right here for select mode. Click on that and double click on a line or an arc there. Next, we can go into our utilities at the top. Let's see what we have. We have translate, rotate, mirror, scale. We went through some of the trim and break functions already, but very similar to the entity modify we just got into. We can go to the top and go to drag corner. So it's doing just that. I click on a corner like this here, and I can drag it over a certain distance, left, right, up, down. I can drag it over a certain distance there and type in the new corner position. And then deform will change a line or an arc and change the curvature of it into an arc like this. So I'm bending it down like that or bending it up. So that's what the drag corner deform options are for. Cleanup optimize, if there were, let's say I broke this, I'm going to go to break screen and break this line into half of what it is here. If I go to cleanup optimize, select my drawing, and click OK, it will clean up those two lines that I broke apart and mend them back together, bring them back into one line there. Erase doubles is if I created a second line anywhere or a second arc anywhere on my drawing, I can highlight my whole drawing and click OK. It will tell me any corrections that have been made. And just above erase doubles, we went through explode. If we had splines, patterns, text, it'll break it into lines and arcs for us. And we'll get into the translate function as well. Translate can be really useful if I need to move anything over, manipulate my drawing, place it where I need to exactly here. I go to my utilities, I go to translate, I can select my drawing here. I'm going to window select it first. I can click on the center point of it and drag it over, just like in text, and click on it a second line to place it down. Click OK to finalize it. Click OK to finalize it. I can also highlight it, and I can type in a translate amount. So I want to move it back in X. Let's move it to the left 5 inches, so -5 in X. I'm going to move it down in Y, -5 inches in Y to move it down, and click OK. So you can type in a number to move it over. In incremental coordinates there under translate amount, if you know a specific location you want it to be in absolute coordinates, that's where the endpoint option is down here at the bottom for these coordinates. So let's say I want to highlight it again. I want the center of the drawing to be at x0, y0, z0. I can place it right at the center of my drawing there again, or any absolute coordinates that I want. Now I want a certain point to go exactly to a certain location here. I can first create some geometry. I'm going to go to create 2D and go to point. I'm going to place a point here wherever I want and hit cancel. And I want this top right corner of the drawing to be placed right at that point over that I created right there. I'm going to go to utilities, go to translate, select my drawing. I'm going to pick my start point right here, pick, and click on this corner right here. Then I can type in a number to place that corner wherever I want. I could drag it from that corner as well. Or I can pick an endpoint, just make sure this is highlighted right here, and click on the point right here to place it there. So you can move your geometry to the exact spot you want in the translate function to be able to do any kind of extrude boss, extrude cut after that, or specific profile cut you want to do here. You want it at an exact location in your drawing. You can place it wherever you want in the translate function. Then we can go to our rotate function, select our drawing. I'm going to rotate it around from the center point here, from x0, y0, z0, so that I can move it from the center here and move it around. Let's move it around 90 degrees so that we can see that. So it's moving it around, rotating it around like that. And if I want to make copies of it, Let's do it in all four corners of the drawing there. You can rotate them around and make additional copies like that. Similar to that, you can mirror it across. So if I go to mirror, click on my drawing, I can mirror it across the y-axis. I can mirror it across the x-axis here and make a copy of it. I can also mirror it across the z-axis. In this instance, we're on z0, so it's not going to move anywhere. Next, we have scaling. So you can scale the drawing up or scale it down. You want to select your drawing. You want to double the size. You've got your scale factor right here of 2 inches. If I type in 0.5, it's creating it as half the size of the drawing. If I type in 0.8, it's going to be 80% of the drawing that I had before. Next, let's see. We've gotten through all of the good utilities that I normally use. Quick trim to trim away what we don't need. Right up to our next intersection. What else do we have? Breaking the entities at a certain location, clean up, optimize, erase doubles. Get into evaluate. With the evaluating for creating prints, you can also create dimensions. By going to the top, we have auto dimensioning. So if you click on a line or an arc like this angled one here, you can get the vertical distance, the horizontal distance, or the total distance, depending on where I move my cursor there. And then I can also type in a note into my drawing, into my print, by typing in any text here. Clicking on a point and creating a leader line with the note I wanted to add in the drawing as well. So that would all be included in a print that you create as well. Then measure 1, measure 2 can be useful because you can highlight this arc, you can get the radius of it, and then once you cancel out, you don't have the dimension on your screen anymore. But you do have the numbers in here that you can copy and use to modify anything. Measure 2 is if you go from point to point, you can get the distance from point to point here in X, distance in Y, and total distance there. I think that's about it with the utilities and the evaluate functions. We went through create 2D to create our drawing. We went through create 3D to create our 3D model. We went through utilities to modify the drawing, manipulate anything we need to in the drawing there. And then we went to evaluate to create some dimensions and create a print. I think that's about it with our CAD side of things that we're getting into today. Please let me know if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns. I'll take a few minutes here to answer any questions that you guys have, and I'll also get into the art side of things. It's a very simple program, very user-friendly, easy to use, where you can go to a new file here, and you can go to Bob Art. So it's down here normally at the bottom left of your page, this icon right here that you can click on. And then you can go to the top, right click, the second option here. Well, actually, yeah, second. Well, to show you first, I don't normally use this, but if you right click on the first option, Bob Art Manager, you can go to load vector files, the bottom option right here, and you can load an AI, Adobe Illustrator file, a PDF file, EPS, not necessarily sure where that's from, but any of those file formats of a vector file you can open into Bob Art. You can also load an image with the next option down here, images. Right click, go to load image, and go to any image that you download onto your computer. I tend to go to this eagle image here and open it. I just typed in eagle clip art into Google, downloaded the image, open it in BobCAD, and you can see the dimensions here. On the left, you've got your X size and Y size. Let's make it 12 by 12. 12 inches in X, 12 inches in Y. I can change the height or width specifically. if I uncheck this box, keep aspect ratio. So maybe I want 12 inches in X and 14 inches in Y to make it a little taller, but then you'll see that it stretches a little bit on us. So if I want it to be the original aspect ratio, I can keep aspect ratio there. And then click OK. So then when I right click on the eagle image here in BobArt that loads in, I can then go to vectorize. And basically what it's going to do is trace around the black and white of the eagle. If I have more than two colors, more than black and white, I can click on the multicolor strategy and click on each of the colors to trace along. And you can see also with the pixelation, I can change that by moving the slider bar over here in BobArt so that it's a cleaner image over here. You can see more closely, it'll make it more pixelated or less pixelated or even less pixelated, which makes it thinner, and you can see the beaks going away and stuff like that. Now the reason for that, the reason for it being pixelated too far on the left or too far on the right, it's basically if we have an image with a foreground and a background of the image, I can tell the software where I want to trace. If I want to trace the foreground of the image more, or if I want to trace the background of the image more. So that's what that slider bar is for. And then I can click OK. And then you can see the blue on the inside and outside of the drawing there. To hide the image, I can right click on image eagle over here on the left and hit blank. And now I've got the drawing to work with. I can do an engraving with this. I can profile cut the outside of the eagle if I wanted to. I could get into 3D modeling with the eagle here, even with the embossing in BobArt, but that's really the gist of BobArt, be able to load an image and be able to vectorize, creating a drawing like this by tracing around the image automatically with BobArt. So really useful stuff there. If you wanted to create a 3D model, again, you could go to Create 3D, extrude boss it out for straight walls or tapered angles. You can also get into BobArt with 3D surfacing very easily with the emboss model option here. You can take a look at that for a second. If I right click, I'm going to create a canvas first. So the second one down is edit canvas, basically creating stock. So I'm going to go 12 inches by 12 inches, the outside of the eagle there. And if I look at it on an angle, the base height here of 1 inch is going to be the thickness of my stock. Now to add or subtract from the stock I have, I right click on Emboss Model. I go to Emboss Regular. I'm going to emboss the whole thing first, the whole outside profile. So I'm going to hold Shift and click on the outside profile of the eagle. And you can see right here, this convex arc, concave arc. This is the extruding up or down with the swept angle that I'm trying to do here. Line would be a tapered angle, convex concave ellipse, or spline where I have a whole lot of control of the curvature that I want here. And then I click OK, and then it will add to the stock that I have. Or I could subtract to get the negative of it by going back into that emboss function that I just created, double clicking on it, and going to the top and changing it from add to subtract. Clicking OK, and now I've got the negative of what I just created. I'm going to go back to add so that I've got this extrude embossed out, and I'll do the eye and the beak and some of the other stuff for the eagle, extrude cutting down into it. So I right click on Emboss Model again, go to Emboss Regular. I'm going to look at, let's say, just the eye, just the whole profile of the eye there, just the main part of the beak here. Let's do this area. And let's do this area too. And let's do the eye too. Okay, so we're cutting inside here. We're cutting inside here. We're cutting inside here. We're avoiding this area and cutting inside the main part of the eye right here on the inside. So it's going to look pretty interesting. I'm going to go to subtract. I'm going to go with the same spline that I created here and click OK. And then I'm going to look at the model, and that's how it's going to look. Now there's a little bit of cleanup work to do. You can see it sort of fade a little bit right here. And there's a lot of, bumpy stuff and things like that. We do have a smoothing tool to make this look even better. So I go over to right click on Emboss Model. We go to Smoothing. Type in the strength of the smoothing that we want to do across the page there, and it smooths things out. I want to make it a little bit smoother here under the eye. So I double click on it and I'll type in 0.2. So it doubles the smoothing strength there. Now something with the geometry that I might want to change there, or I could smooth this area out individually by right clicking on Emboss Model, Smoothing, and we've got an individual smoothing tool. Oops, sorry, that's not it. It is under Sculpting. And we have a smoothing tool. You can see if I make the diameter a little bit larger than my cursor and my highlighting there, make it a little bit larger. There we go. So in blue, that's what I'm smoothing individually, and I can change the strength right here. So every time I click and hold on my mouse button, I'm smoothing out everything right there. And I can click and hold the mouse button to drag across and smooth all of it out. So a lot of cool stuff in BobArt to be able to make exactly what you want right there, even if it has some kind of weird geometry that it came in with. I can smooth it all out. And then after that, I could go in and I might change the beak there. I might want to, after the fact, deselect that part of the beak. Sort of looks like a toucan if I select it. And then I go back in, and now I've got the eagle looking a little bit better there. I could go into the 3-axis milling part of it and go in and pocket all of these areas out, and plane across on the flats here to create this eagle shape inside of a piece of stock. Can be done really easy, as you saw here in BobArt. Be able to import an image that we had originally like this. Actually, the image was this here that I imported. I had BobArt vectorize or trace around the image automatically to create my drawing. And then I can go to the Emboss Model and create some add and subtract features to add and subtract to a model like this in BobArt to give me a whole lot of 3D contours for a shape like this to do some 3-axis milling with. So I would classify this technically in CAD. This is in BobArt though. It is an extra add-on to your license. If you guys have it, you guys are able to use the vectorize automatically there. If not, you can always call us and see what it would be for the extra part of the licensing for BobArt. But what we've gone over as well in the CAD side of things in our webinar today, we went through creating just a basic 2D shape under Create 2D, going through some of the sketching options and some of the text functions, gear generator, all that good stuff. Went to Create 3D with our Extrude Boss, Extrude Cut, and Extrude Curve, Planar Surface, Revolve Surface. Went to our utilities. We can translate, rotate, mirror the drawing, manipulate the drawing any which way we need to create the specific 3D model we need, and then evaluate for dimensioning, creating notes and things like that for a print like this. Then after that, we also went through the different layers So we can create different layers to separate solids from each other, separate the drawing from each other, so that I can easily see my 3D model of the flag. Put it on a different layer here so that I can hide it and work with and separate it out from the drawing to work with the drawing. And then we went over to UCS Manager to sketch on a top plane, then sketch on a different plane, front UCS, side UCS, to be able to sketch on the front here and be able to extrude cut to make this wavy shape into a 3D model like this here. So a lot of good stuff in the CAD side of things in BobCAD to create your specific 3D model that you need to be able to your specific 3D model that you need to be able to then go into the CAM side of BobCAD, our computer-aided machining side of it, to use any CNC machine to be able to mill out areas like this to create your finished product. That's all I've got today. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, please let me know in the comment section here before I log off. Answer any questions that you guys have. If you look in the comment section as well, we have our contact info that I typed in. Our technical support line is 727-489-0003. Our email address for tech support is support@bobcad.com. We're open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, to be able to answer any questions that you may have in the future. And we also offer online training. So if you need to book an hour session one-on-one with a trainer, or 2 hours one-on-one with a trainer, you could book those hours throughout the week. We can log into your computer and answer any questions that you have with designing like we did today, and also with the programming side of things.